Welcome to the Narrative Mindset Podcast. If this is your first time tuning in, I would appreciate it if you went back and viewed previous episodes when you get time. So, I want to give you a quick update on the podcast. Uh, I know if you viewed some of my older podcasts, the previous episodes, I did tell you that I was using my equipment. I was using Fi-Fi. I got a Fi-Fi microphone. I got a Fi-Fi mixer. But for some reason, I don't know, I still wasn't happy. I still wasn't getting the sound I was looking for. So I broke down the other day and ended up getting a Rodecaster Pro mixer. And I have a Shure SM7B coming. I think it'll be here Saturday, I think. I don't know. I guess I'm just the kind of person that just likes to, I don't know, when I'm buying things or want something, I don't really want to, you know, get something that's to me subpar and then end up having to upgrade or get another program to make it work the way it should, as I did. I got the Fi-Fi mixer, which is a good value mixer, but I wanted something that was more professional because I want to bring listeners, I want to bring you good sound, good professional sound, and I want to show growth because I always say growth is the most important to me. And uh, I did it also when I went to get my car. That's a more of a toy, whatever. I was looking around because I was spending money like crazy. And it was like, I'm just wasting money. Kind of still do. I think I'm one of those spenders that just buy it, just because or whatever. Because podcasting right now is just is a hobby, but we'll see what happens. Um, but when I got my Mustang, I looked and I looked and I looked, and I was looking every day on my breaks when I had time, whatever, whatever. And I kept looking and I just got tired of looking. So what I did was I found a Mustang sight unseen. All I saw was a picture of it. And I said, you know what? It was $10,000 over what I had got approved for my loan for because I had figured out what I wanted to pay as far as the loan was concerned. So I had a little bit of money in the bank. So I said, well, you know what? Screw it. Called the lady, asked her a few questions about it, made sure it had this, and said, you know what? Whatever. Give me a out the door price and pay for it. I'll be there to pick it up in a couple of days. And then I was done with it because I don't know. I get tired of looking and searching and it's just like, you know what, screw it. And I did the same thing with the Rodecaster Pro because I was talking to Copilot and I was asking, okay, what's best mixer to get? And it said Rodecaster Pro is number one. And then I think they had Bowcaster on there or something like that, a couple other ones. But I looked them up and said, and then they said, well, if you get this one, you're going to have to get this other app you know, to make it do this and make it do that. And finally, they said, you know what? I'm sick of it. I asked uh, Copilot. I said, okay, so if I get the uh, the Rodecaster Pro 2. It's all in one. Everything I need, you know, cut and dry. Co-pilot said yes. Got on Amazon and paid for it. It's a little bit expensive. It's like 700, but I wanted to invest in my podcast because, like I said, I want to bring quality sound to my podcast. I don't want my, podcast to sound real cheesy if I can help it. Still working on my voice, but it's getting better. This mixer is really good, and also I want to mention that my Shure SM7B has not arrived. So right now I'm talking through a Fi-Fi. I think it's a K688 or something like that. But I mean, still, I have to give them credit because with the Fi-Fi, I mean, it and my headphones, it sounds really good right now. So that's just an update, real quick, and I'll kind of go into what this episode is going to be about. Um, Here's the thing: anger is a funny thing. You know, anger is an emotion that can actually dictate how your life will go based on how you handle it. Every day you get up, you involve somebody in that part of yourself. That emotion called anger, you involve a person in because of the way you handle it yourself. People go through things every day and they don't handle things where they should. So the people they come in contact with are the closest thing that they can take out whatever they're going through. Everybody experiences anger, even myself. It angers me that I don't know. It just seems like people are angry or seem to be upset with me when I come around. When I come around you. And it's like, I'm not even talking to you, but you're angry with me and you don't know me. That doesn't really make sense. And it really makes me think that maybe you're angry about how your life is going and what you're not doing. And maybe I remind you of those things. And that's it. I don't really see that as being my problem because I figured out how to manage my anger. And I figured out that growth is what matters. And I had to put that first. I had to turn my eye to a lot of things, even things that physically hurt me, fights and, you know, arguments and, where I was actually embarrassed, but I had to walk away because the thing about anger to me is it decides how your life is going. It decides how it's going to go. Because first, I feel you have to pinpoint what's important. And then you have to decide that nothing else comes before that. But I find most people have such a hard time wrapping their head around that. And it's easier for them to take your frustration out on whatever problems you have in your life. It's easier to take it out on somebody else. And it's much easier to destroy somebody else's life because people don't understand that, you know, when you do something to try and destroy somebody else's life, that's not going to make your life better. And that's much easier for some people than to deal with their own problems. Or should I say, you know, fixing the problem that starts with you. It literally starts with you loving yourself enough to do the work it takes to get where you to get where you need to be. Excuse me. It starts with loving yourself. And when you start loving yourself, you create an environment of peace. And you create a space where you know what's good for you. You know what's good for your health. And you know what's good for your peace. And it makes it easier to walk away from spaces that invade those particular feelings. Because, in my own opinion, if you're not healthy and you're not happy and you're not going to a place that's negatively affecting your happiness and your peace and your health, then it's not a good environment to be in, anyways. Because most people end up being stuck at a job that's taking away all their time, and they don't have any time for family, but they don't make enough money to quit the job. And since getting the job, they've got so many things that they can't afford to really quit it. And the hours they work don't give them enough time to not only find another job, but to go through the process of getting the job once they do get an offer. And they can't afford to take a chance on the job because more than likely, if they aren't making enough money, they haven't put away a savings. This constricts them to an environment where they're unhappy. And it's sad to say, but you have to blame yourself and your decisions. Unfortunately, the government, it shut down due to Democrats and Republicans not being able to come to an agreement. And the thing about that is the government, they're always getting paid no matter what. But you have military, you have daycares, you have SNAP benefits, and all kinds of stuff that's federally funded getting cut off because Democrats and Republicans can't come to an agreement in in a way, I kind of understand, but it's a conundrum because you have people who aren't getting paychecks, but at the same time, you don't want the Republican Party or the Democratic Party to just agree to anything as a simple solution because it could end up being detrimental to your livelihood. It's just hard for me to imagine being a federal worker and getting to a point of where you have to go to work and you're not getting a paycheck. That's the reason the whole system was designed so that you get paid to do a job. So a product could be produced more efficient. It's almost been a month for federal workers since they got a paycheck. But the government shutting down is affecting the entire system. I remember working for a place called the Deacons Conference and always wanted to work. I was always a hard worker. I always just wanted to make money. So I applied for this place. I went there and they had all the coffee you wanted. I guess so you could stay energized. But after I had been there for about 2 weeks, I finally asked the guy, I said, hey, when do you guys get paid? And the guy said, oh, this is volunteer work. So I said, oh, and that was my last day at that particular job because I'm not going to keep going in and not getting paid. That's just not going to happen. I'm all for volunteer work, but I haven't reached a point in my life where I can do it on a full time basis. But for all the people that are getting help that's federally funded right now, it is just an incredibly tough time for them because, you know, one minute you have a good federal job, next minute you're in a situation where you have to go to work and you're not getting paid at all. You don't have a savings saved up. And they're trying to figure out how you're going to pay for groceries, how you're going to pay for a car payment, how you're going to pay for a mortgage, how you going to pay for something as simple as a kid's lunch, which is when you're trying to budget, that can be a little daunting. You get done with all that, and if that's not bad enough, and you watch the news and you see the Democrats and Republicans fighting over issues that can either hurt you or benefit you, depending on which way it goes. So I'm not sure how a person would feel in that particular position. Because on one hand, bottom line is you need a paycheck to take care of yourself and your family, but you still want the party that you're partial to stand up for certain issues that could affect certain parts of your job and pay. And when this is over, you still have to brace for the next government possibly shutdown and what happens. So right now it's kind of a complete disaster that I hope will end shortly for the sake of federal workers and people who get help that's probably funded on one hand. But I also don't want to push a quick resolve because both sides have issues that they want to get done. The Republicans have issues that are not going to favor the Democrats, particularly. And the Democrats have issues that are not going to favor the Republicans, particularly. So emotion plays a big part. And at a time like this, anger management is a very crucial part to control because it's tough to agree with self love and anger management. You're not getting a paycheck. And I don't know how you're going to provide for your family. I've been doing rideshare for almost 5 years. And what happened to let a lot of things that are involved in rideshare, one being, which people who are going through things and they want to take it out on people who they have access to. And one of them is me, the rideshare driver. I usually, at one time, I developed a really bad attitude and I was getting low ratings. But when I looked at the situation a little bit different and said that I was going to give them a great experience no matter what, because I wanted to get good ratings, even though the rider may have got in and may have been in a bad mood. Uh, my mood and the way I handled the situation helped them release and it helped change their day, equaling good ratings so far. I had a rider that I picked up from a fitness center. It's kind of around the corner from my apartment. And believe it or not, that's the first time I've ever been there. I've been to the place next door to it. I've been passed by it tons of times. First time I've ever been there. But I he came in. He said, "Hi, how are you?" I said, "I'm good." And we chit chatted for a little bit. And he told me that he was at home where a guy that he had known for 10 years and a female kind of got into, you know, a scuffle or whatever, a word scuffle, not a fight. They had some words that were exchanged. And unfortunately, guns were drawn, shots were fired, and he ended up getting hit in his legs, saying two people had guns and he got shot. I'm not sure how many times he got shot. Uh, my advice to him was to stay quiet because a person who can control their emotions usually wins. And when someone says something to you, they're usually expecting you to say something back to kind of drag you into their narrative somewhat. And it usually means to them that you're not in control of your emotions. So therefore, they have the upper hand. And that's why in those situations, I stay quiet because I learned how to control my anger. And lastly, I said this in a previous episode, but all of this comes with doing the work on yourself. And I'm going to say that a lot if you go on the journey with me on my podcast. It's all about doing a self evaluation of yourself and seeing where you are and doing the work to change that. And I'm no expert, but for me, if you want to take my advice, I had to sit down and I had to ask myself, I had to understand happiness. That pretty much to me means there's something that I like doing that I don't want to be bothered. I had to understand what love is. Love, to me, in my own personal meaning, it means something that I really don't want to do. You got a wife, there's just snowed last night, there's 5 feet of snow. You don't want to get up and go out and shovel the driveway, shovel her car off, you know, make sure she's good and start her car up and everything like that. But you do it because you love her. That's what love means to me. I had to understand what being content means. Content means you've gotten to a point to where you're comfortable. Nobody's gotten to the top of that mountain yet. Well, maybe Jeff Bezos and those guys are kind of playing around at the peak, but uh, being content means that you're. My evaluation is you have two people, two guys climbing a mountain, and there's ledges. Climb a little bit, then there's another ledge. Climb a little bit, there's another ledge. There are two safety ropes, one way up, and there's one kind of a little bit lower. Two guys climbing up. One's climbing a little bit faster than the other one. One, he gets to his safety rope. Safety rope, he's got a little bit of safety rope behind him. He gets up far enough and he takes a rest on the ledge. The one that takes the rest on the ledge, he's content. He's at a point in life where he can kind of take a break. He's still working just as hard, but he's comfortable and in the space that he's in life. The other one, he's still climbing. He hasn't reached his safety rope yet. He's still hustling. He's still grinding. He's still, he can't think about anything else because he hasn't gotten to ledge, number one. He hasn't gotten to a safety rope, number two. So if he falls, he's hitting the bottom. So that's the example I use for being content. being peaceful, that's something that I recently did. I had been working on it for a while, but I recently just, you know, shut the door on that. And that's just, you know, anything that's negative, I just don't want to hear it. You know, I don't do the whole he say, she say, he did, she did, have you heard? I don't do any of that. You know, it's funny because I was telling a friend of mine, I said, hey, because he was having some issues with his girlfriend or whatever. And I told him, I said, look, man, I said, one mistake that we make is we meet new people, but the problem is that first conversation that we have, the one where you're on the phone all night, longest conversation that you'll ever have in that relationship, you spend that whole relationship telling each other everything that's none of each other's business, right? It's none of anybody's business how many kids you have, you know, what time your baby daddy's coming over, what positions y'all had sex in, what kind of, if you and him got a business or what type of situation is going on with, the woman has to go over there, an hour early, sleep on the couch because kid situation. That's not my business. And I don't want to hear it. So the way I approach that situation is I say, if it didn't go on in my house, if it went on outside my door, it's not my business. And that contributes to my peace. And then if you've listened to previous episodes, my health. Health is good. I ride my bike every single day, about 6 days out of the week, ride it for a half hour. I've beaten high blood pressure. I'm beating type 2 diabetes. Still it on paper, but I beat them in in regular terms when I go take my blood test. So I'm, you know, very good position, happy, healthy, content, peaceful. Very good position. And I promise you that once you reach that point, you will not let anybody destroy it because it's a wonderful place to be in. It's just like we spend our entire lives, feeling like we have to go through these things. It's like I don't know, it's like we're given the wrong information to begin with, and it hurts us so bad because we spend our entire life with the wrong set of rules somewhat. And I want to kind of correct that when we get grown, we twist it. But I don't want to say that we spend our entire life with the wrong set of rules because we get the right set of rules, home rules, but we don't really get that conversation about we don't really get that conversation about life, about those things that I just listed, because there's so many people out here who are ready to throw it all away, for something that they have no control over. A lot of people out here who are, who don't understand that, you don't want to admit that you're upset. And this whole situation started because of the issues that you didn't take care of. You didn't go to work, so you don't have enough money to pay your rent. You know, you want to smoke weed all day, so you ain't got enough money to fix your car. Car keeps breaking down. Just fixed it. I got to take it back to the shop. You ready to, to shoot the mechanic? It's not his fault. It just happens. You have to keep going through it. It'll get better, but you have to get smarter about it. I mean, I can't tell you how many years I spent with that particular feeling. Like, this car just continues to break down. I mean, I just could not catch a break. Couldn't catch a break. I never thought that I would be in the position I'm in right now. And I don't want to say that I'm in some glorious position because I go to work just like everybody else. I'm just a huge saver. And I leverage my my bank account and my credit card. And I got to a point to where my credit is so good that I got a loan, signature loan that I don't use, just sitting there. I had applied for another signature loan and I got it, but I just didn't. I was too lazy to fill out the emails and get it because I don't get it unless I need it. So I have to have a clear plan when I make a move. That's just me. I have to see that entire plan before I make that move. I can't just make a move and on a whim. I just can't do it. There has to be a plan, you know. So, just like I was saying, I spent years, with junky cars that broke down every time I turned around. And it was like, I just couldn't believe it. And I even here, moving to Southfield, I even had a car that was breaking down a little bit. It didn't start breaking down until I actually started really putting it to work, and that was when I started doing Lyft. And when it broke down, then I getting a Prius was just a whim. It was just something, I was, you know, I had to make a decision. I had to get something else. I needed to get something else, and I had to, make a decision. You know, I did my research on the Prius. I had never had one before. Didn't know anything about hybrids, and I just went out on a limb and said, "Well, I'll get it, and I hope this is the right decision." But at the same time, I had, you know, got things together so that uh, that I had layers in place. So, like I said, I had a plan for it, and it went pretty good. And I know a lot about them right now, and they're pretty good cars. They run pretty good with little, very little maintenance. Uh, Most of the maintenance on them so far, I can look online and do that kind of thing and do it myself. Um, but that's what I go by, and I want to make sure that I say again that I'm no expert. But once you get to that point, in which I so hope that you do, if you're not there, it's wonderful. You know, I can imagine being in a relationship where I'm totally in control of my emotions, and it's like no arguing, fussing, all that type of stuff. Because that's another thing. People say, "Oh, you're gonna have problems." No, you don't have to have problems. If both people have have done the work on themselves, you can actually have a great peaceful relationship. But it's always one person that strays from those rules, and that's when you start having problems. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Narrative Mindset Podcast.
Mhm, 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 mhm.